you can hear the sound of my voice, that means you are locked into another episode of the Casual Friday podcast here at Knicks Film School and on the Knicks Film School YouTube channel. You already know the vibes. Like this video, comment, subscribe, share this to all your Knicks friends, your friends that love basketball and like good conversation about hoops, because Jeff and Shawn with a W are in the building to talk about the Knicks, the week that was, and the week that will be. Shawn, what's going on, man? How you feeling?
Man. Yo, the vibes are vibeless, B. Like, I just like I'm ready for the playoffs. Like, listen, we got clapped by another top 3 team. Jalen Brunson hasn't played since before St. Patrick's Day. Like, I am ready. I am ready. Like, since that loss to the Celtics on that Sunday afternoon, and since the fact that we've been basically, for all intents and purposes, knock on wood, been locked into the 3 seed since, like I said, the first week of March, it's like, man, just like the title of this show, get us to the playoffs. Healthy, of course, but get us to the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. It's what, 6 games left in the season, about roughly give or take. It's time. It's time to start the second season. I think we've seen all the points that are going to be proven. The question marks are known. And now it's just time to gear up. This should be the preparation before the second season begins. And I'm ready for it too. Like the vibes, we're going to talk about a lot here in our little bit of time. It's just weird. I think if I had to call it anything, man, I would call it weird. Weird because if this was any other season, I would feel like, yeah, there's some things to be down about, but there's a lot more upside. But I think with the burden of expectations, and I think a lot of folks over expected with this team in year one, and now they're facing the reality of their disappointment. And now it's going in the other direction to where we talk about this team as if they're fighting for a play-in spot. So I'm trying to find where the middle ground is and how we can have a realistic outlook on this team and what they are ultimately going to be. So I start with you, Shawn. We were talking about the consistent inconsistency. We've been talking about it all season. One of the things that we spoke about when we spoke, and we had the show Casual Friday after the loss in the NBA Cup to the Hawks, aka Dice Roll Gate. And one of the things we've been harping on with this team is identity. What is their identity? What is it going to be? And whatever your identity is going to be, you need to over-index and lean into it to execute that identity as best as you possibly can to give you the best chance to win. So I'll ask you, do you think we've come closer to identifying what the identity of this team is? And if we have, what is it?
I think this team has an identity. I think this team's identity is we are good enough to beat most teams. And if we're not, it is what it is. And I don't necessarily think that's wrong. I think there are a lot of teams that are like, all right, we can lean. Well, I'll say this. I think this team leans on its talent more than most Knicks teams that we have been accustomed to watching. Most good Knicks teams, because listen, let's exclude everything from 2002 to 2019, because save for a few seasons here and there, it's like there's nothing really to point to. But when you looked at the teams of the 90s, grit, determination, fight, they knew they weren't the best, but they were going to they did not look at their opponents as if they couldn't beat them. And they wanted to scratch and claw and fight and do whatever. They were underdogs because they were playing in that same era as arguably the greatest player of all time. And last year's team, well, actually, the majority of the good teams of the Tibbs era have kind of they've kind of followed that mold. Like the We Here season, no one saw that coming. There were a bunch of underdogs. Last year's team, the year before that, the We Back season, that was because everyone was like, oh, well, the Knicks went 37-45 the year before, so they, that little one season wonder is done. And then they were the 5 seed and they won a playoff series. They won in 5. And then last year's team, down 3 starters for 3 months, still managed to win 50 games. And everyone liked the fight and grit and determination of that team. So this Knicks team, we've never really rooted for a quote-unquote glamour team before. I know I never have, right? Like the closest is that 2013 team because that was Melo and a bunch of guys just putting up a bunch of threes, right? This is a glamour team. This is a two all-stars. There's 2 guys who make all NBA, 1 guy who will probably be all NBA defense. Like it's a little more glamour, but we as a Knicks fan base don't like that. New York is as much a blue collar town as there is in this country, and we have been conditioned to think our Knicks should play a certain way, and when they don't play that way, it rubs us the wrong way as a fan base.
I like that assessment because I'm kind of on your wavelength. It feels like we're rooting for one of those teams, not one of our teams, if that makes sense. So we could take it to other sports, right? You're a Ravens fan. I'm a Giants fan. I don't think when football, it's a little bit different. I guess the equivalent would be like a West Coast offense team or something like that puts up a lot of points. But I don't think I could ever say that I've rooted for a glamour version of my squad.
You never rooted for the greatest show on turf.
Right. Or like the Chiefs fans. The Chiefs fans can never be in this mud. They can never get it out the mud because they were pristine. They were in the sauna. You feel me? With the way that their team operated. Has there ever been a glamour Tottenham team that you rooted for?
Okay, let's leave Tottenham out of this. All right.
Wait, I'm talking about the past. I'm not even trying to turn it up.
There were teams in
Shawn and Kane and what, like 3 years ago? No, was that a glamour team?
Even like those 2018 teams that were like they finished second, they finished third. Champagne football, used to call shout out to expressions. Yeah, but honestly, I think the football analogy is good for the Ravens. Like, listen, the Ravens' identity is defense. Like Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Terrell Suggs, right? If the Ravens are 14-3 and they're winning every game 35-31, the fan base is gonna be like, I don't really believe in these dudes because we value defense. And this town values defense, and when we just and grit and hard work and determination, and when it looks like you and I say this all the time, like we'll be in our little group chat, and within 5 minutes we'll be like, oh, they decide not to be serious tonight. That's gonna be one of those days.
For sure. Yeah, that's where I had to temper my expectations, and even on another level, not so much temper my expectations. But I had to be realistic with the team that I'm watching. And there's a level of acceptance to that. So I don't think since I've been a Knicks fan, we've rooted for the highlight players, the players that are going to be on the top 10, the NBA.com top 10 every night, the players who are the most electric. We root for the hardworking, gritty, get it out the mud, scrappy, underdog type players, the players that we can root for because no one else is trying to root for them. That's why when Melo got here, it was an inflection point with the fan base because that was the first time, at least in my fandom, that the New York Knicks fan base had to accept a bandwagon community as one of their own. Because a lot of Melo fans came over and then became Knicks fans because of Melo. We never really had that before as a fan base. So that was kind of that's the other fan bases. That's not really our type of team. But what I had told you before, start of the season, even when before we got to this point, and Brunson is another example. The way that the national narrative transformed, I'm going to put a lot of that credit on this fan base, because every time they try to say that because he doesn't have lifts in his shoes, that he can't be a top 5, top 10 player, or he can't lead a team to a championship because of history and all of that, the fan base pushed back. The fan base called out media heads and folks that were perpetuating narratives and talking out of both sides of their face. Were able to bring up the contradictions in a lot of the conversation, to where Brunson went from getting snubbed out of an all-star spot to getting snubbed out of the starter role to finally being an all-star starter. And now, for all intents and purposes, is a staple of All-NBA. Until someone else comes and snatches it from him, he's going to be a staple in the All-NBA conversation. And you got a guy like Cat, who probably is, just off his game alone, not his mentality. The mentality is where I think there was a lot of propaganda around it. His game is an antithetical to what is associated with New York Knicks basketball. Because he's not hard-nosed. He's not defense first. He's more finesse. He's highly skilled offensively. And those players usually don't vibe with the fan base. I think he may be one of the first. But even when I'm talking to fans, I'll hear people say stuff like, yo, keep Mitch, trade Cat, get him out of here. We'll get one more piece and then we'll be good. We just need the defense because the defense is going to solve it all. And I'm like, yo, fam, really? Like, this is where we're at right now with a team that's 2 wins away from 50. And the biggest knock on them is that they can't beat 3 teams. 3 teams. I'm not going to let y'all try to sneak the Lakers in. Funny how that Laker talk is going now, right? Remember the top 4 teams? Remember when it was the top 4 teams when they became like how they were talking about the Celtics big 3? Oh, but you got to add Rondo. That's how they tried to put the Lakers into the 3-team conversation. That they can't beat literally like 80-something percent, 10% of the league, right? That's been the real knock. And the way the conversation has gone, it's just incongruent with what we're actually seeing on the court. And I think the frustration over the lack of never say die in this team is where I think has the most disconnect, because I do think this team is a team that wakes up and says, we could beat half the league just by being the New York Knicks, which you couldn't really say that back in the day.
No, you could not. Nope.
So that's one. 2, I think when they get down to a certain point, their mentality is live to fight another day, not we will fight and die or win tonight. And tonight is all that matters. They're more so a live to fight another. Like, they'll be pissed, but they live to fight another day. Like, they'll try, but they're not going to empty out the clip to try, like the underdog Knicks were in the second half of the season, out of necessity. That's at least how I see it. What do you think, Shawn?
You know something? I just figured something. Okay. Wow. Like,
I saw a light pop up.
Yes.
A light bulb.
All right, let's go to our friends in Miami. And the joke we always make is that Eric Spoelstra will go to Publix or go to Kroger, find a dude, and teach him how to shoot 40% from 3, right?
Yep.
And then they'll get a bag and they'll go find another one. But the thing is, someone said this. I remember reading this like 2 years ago, last year. So I forget who said. I hate that I can't credit them. It says the Miami Heat are excellent at finding fringe players who will give their soul to the Heat and do things they don't want to do. Like, you could have been a dude who's a scorer your entire college career, but you came from like a mid-major and you could barely get in the league. It's like, well, if you want to stay in the NBA, you're gonna have to play defense. You're gonna have to rebound. You're gonna have to claw. You're gonna have to dive on the ground for loose basketballs, right? That's what they do. And this team is not full of guys who will do anything to stay in the league, because the lowest paid player in the starting five makes $18 million a year, right? And he doesn't shoot threes. So, but what I thought of was, and this is going to give some people a blind, but what if this team, those days where we see that they're not serious, what if I'm not saying they have collectively do it. I'm not saying they have a group chat at the start of five, like, yo, let's trick this game off. But what if they're like, you know what? We're going to have to pace ourselves because the head coach won't pace ourselves for us. You got like, listen, I remember, and listen, I can literally hear the Tibbs apologists rolling their eyes. I can hear you. But I remember reading about a player said that, like, sometimes when players are tired, but the coach won't take them out the game, they will purposely miss a defensive assignment to give up the three for the coach to call a timeout. An NBA player said this. Like, I'm not making this up. They'll miss an assignment, they'll miss a rotation, whatever, because, like, I'm tired, but the coach won't call a timeout, coach won't take me out the game. All right, I'm going to give this up because – so, and listen, I'm not saying they're doing this, so don't aggregate me or come at me on Twitter. Actually, you can come at me on Twitter all you want. It's Twitter. But what if this team is saying, like, you know what? We are going to pace ourselves because we know ultimately what matters is not beating the Washington Wizards in December, but it's having our best for the Boston Celtics in May and June.
Yeah,
well, June will be amazing, but May.
Yeah, I love that. I love that they're in. And to add on to what you're saying, I don't think that it's a situation where the Knicks are waking up and saying, you know what, this game in the schedule, if I'm in, I'm in, but I ain't trying to go all out like that. I think there's some teams where, like a Hornets or a Wizards, where if they lose that game and they play 30 plus minutes, they're pissed. They're absolutely pissed. Like, I believe it when Josh Hart is pissed when they trick a game off. But when they're competing, they're probably more prone, as Macri says, to let go of the rope than the team last year. So that's one thing we can do right now, Shawn, is the differences between last year and this year's team in terms of identifying the identity and how Knicks fans should approach them. Because we could talk about them the last 6 games. The Cleveland game was what it was. I thought they did well in that first half. I think the development of OG Anunoby into Super Saiyan 3 and Anunoby, the demon has arisen.
Baby Kawhi.
Baby Kawhi, the man who has a new move every game, and doesn't want to talk about it because he doesn't want to make it hot. And people start to scout him. Like, even when he was asked in post games by Monica McNutt and the new Knicks radio squad, where they were like, "Yo, you got a new hop step or whatever," and he's like, "Shh, don't tell nobody." Right? When he's going like that, like, I think those developments are strong. The second half, I would have loved for them to win. I would have loved for it to be a close victory, but I already knew they were beyond the 8 ball. And the Cavs, to our points before, they woke up and they said, yo, we cannot lose this game. We're going to turn up. The defense slipped up. They couldn't hit a shot, ran out of gas. You can be disappointed in it. I know there's been creators who have felt really down on that. But for me, Shawn, I can't take that loss to heart when I saw what they did in the first half. And I realized what happened towards the end. We can talk about strategies, who should have played, who should have gone in. Maybe Mikal should have been more aggressive offensively. Maybe there could have been different sets that they could have played to counteract the run. The fact of the matter is the Cavs were going to make a run, and they needed more offense, ironically, this game, to hold them off, and they didn't have it. So I'm not going to look at it as an indictment of anything. It would have been great for the narrative for a win. Probably would have been even better for their mental health as a team to beat them. But what I think we have here, especially with the Cavs, is a team with a vendetta. That they are motivated to win because the Knicks eliminated them in the playoffs. And I don't think Garland, that core was around. They're not going to let those players forget it. Then you got a guy like DeAndre Hunter who has Knicks history, and he was on the winning side. So he's bringing that chip on his shoulder as well, right? Even Max Strus. You have a lot of the ghosts of the last 3 Knicks playoff runs on that team. So, of course, they're going to be extra motivated to beat this team. I'm not saying it as an excuse or anything. I'm just telling you that's why I wasn't harping on the loss as much as anything. But when I look at last year to this year, I feel like because of the personnel that was available, 1, and 2, just the overall mentality of the guys that were on the team, they would have emptied the clip out that night to try to snatch that victory and hold on. This was the same team last year who, when JB got hurt, that remember when he caught the stinger in his foot or whatever that was in his leg, and he went out, and then they proceeded to smack the Cavs.
That's a good call.
Albeit a different teams. But I'm just saying this was a team that rose to that occasion. And I think the Knicks did rise for like a half, and then they fell off. But I say all that to say, Shawn, what do you think is the main differences between last year and this year's team on either side that informs your opinion on how you follow this team now?
All right. So first, let me say this. To the Uber driver that listens to the Knicks Film School podcast that doesn't like it when we curse because he plays the podcast in the car, I'm going to give you 5 seconds to turn down the volume now. Okay? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I don't give a fuck about that Cleveland game. Like, I do not give a fuck about a game that was a second night of a back-to-back
Sega Baba
on the road, down 4 rotation players. I don't give a fuck. And listen, honestly, it would not surprise me if they didn't give a fuck either. Like, not that they don't, and when I say that they don't give a fuck, it's not that they don't want to win the game, but they're like, we're not going balls to the wall to try to win this game. Because listen, they can open ESPN.com or NBA.com. They know math. They can see the standings. They can say, like, all right, we're probably going to be the 3 seed. Indiana will have to go 5-1, and which they actually could because their schedule's a joke. But I don't give a rat's ass about that game, and neither did they. Okay, to a certain extent. Difference between last year and this year. Speaking of those Indiana Pacers, I pulled up the box score from last year's game against the Pacers. That is the game before the All-Star break. I think it was right before the All-Star break, or pretty close to before the All-Star break. That was the Jalen Brunson born to play basketball game.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The starting lineup was Precious Achiuwa, Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, Jalen Brunson, Isaiah Hartenstein. And coming off the bench were Miles McBride, Jericho Sims, and Malachi Flynn. All right. Precious Achiuwa is a lottery pick that was on his 3rd team in 5 years. Josh Hart has been traded 3 times. Dante DiVincenzo's been on 3 different teams. Jalen Brunson, 2nd-round pick. Isaiah Hartenstein was on 3 different teams, up and down in the G League. Miles McBride, 2nd-round pick who did not play a ton in the beginning, had to fight for his place. Jericho Sims was the 58th pick in the draft. Malachi Flynn, I think it was a late 1st-round pick.
Dante.
Yes, those are guys. Remember what I said about Miami and Spoelstra and how they get guys at the fight. The majority of those there's one lottery pick in that. There's one lottery pick, and it's Precious Achiuwa.
which is crazy.
I don't know if he's lottery. I don't think he's lottery, but he's like a top 20. Like he's not like he was like 29 or something like that. I'll look it up. But these are guys that had to fight. These are guys that had to fight. Some of them to be in the league, some of them to get a second contract, some of them to get not to get sent on a G League, some of them to get playing time. These are guys that had to fight. And Precious was the 20th pick in the first round. These are guys that had to fight. You go to this year's team, McCall was a lottery pick. Cat was number 1. Like, and it's not that they are. What's the word? What's the phrase I want to use here?
Entitled?
Yeah, I don't want to use the word entitled, but at the same time, like, listen, good-looking people know they're good-looking, and they know what they can get away with and not get away with. And I think this team is a collective because, listen, even though Jalen Brunson, a second-round pick, had to fight, now he's a top 10 player. And I'm not saying for the record, I am not saying that Jalen Brunson is entitled or anything like that, but, like, as a collective, this team knows it can, to your point, it can beat half the league by rolling out of bed. And think about it. How many times have we said this team is unserious, and yet they're about to win 50 games again? That's the difference. That's the difference right there. Like, listen, Preston Chua was probably looking at, I'm not going to be in the league until he got traded to the Knicks last year. Like, Jericho Sims is buried on the bench in Milwaukee, right? Like, again, he was picked 58, right? People talk about Isaiah Hartenstein. He should have left. Motherfucker, if you went from, I went from $8 million a year for 2 years to here's $30 million next year, like, he fought for that. So we have a team that knows how good they are. And they know how good they are, not in the image of the good Knicks teams we have known through the majority of our time as a fan. I've been a fan of this team since 92. This is season 33 or 34 for me. Like, it's different. And it's hard to accept for some of us.
Right. You know that saying, hard work beats talent where talent doesn't work hard? This is a team with talent that does work hard. But part of working hard is knowing when you might not have to work that hard. That's working smart.
There we go.
Not only do they work hard, they work hard. I mean, not only do they work hard, they work smart, right? And I think the other thing about this team, the true difference is really in the entitlement of us as fans. Because last year, we were rooting for the scrappy underdog. Once Julius popped his shoulder, nobody picked us to win. We are disrupting the NBA playoffs because Jalen Brunson has emerged as a superstar. Isaiah Hartenstein has become one of the best centers by advanced metrics and normal metrics in the NBA. Josh Hart has emerged as the S-tier utility player. Dante DiVincenzo, from the past, just shot 85 more threes in the time that I've been talking to you. In the past, this dude, they were built for the moment that they were in. And remember, that OG Anunoby trade turned things up for this team to where they had the best. He had one of the greatest plus minuses streak of all time. They were 12-1 in January, I believe. Like, remember
14-2.
14-2, right? This was a team that got hot at the right moment, and they had the mentality where they truly had nothing to lose. And even with all of that, they were the strongest competitors for the Celtics. And if they didn't all collapse into a pile of Legos in the series against the Pacers, then maybe we're having a completely different conversation than we were having before then. I think this year, because of all the moves, and to a point justifiably so, the expectations changed. Okay, we got rid of Julius Randle. We had to trade Dante DiVincenzo. We got Mikal Bridges. We wanted the whole Nova Knicks squad. But okay, if we're flipping Mikal for Dante, you brought us into that. Cat for Julius Randle and Dante. We're kind of getting the best of both worlds from Julius and Dante in Cat. We're changing the dynamic of the team. This is no longer a blue collar team. They just got promoted to manager. So now they're in the office. Yeah, they remember when they were in the trenches with you, but now they got to handle all this paperwork. Now they have to become people managers. Now they have different priorities with the goal to remain the same, to be effective at what they do. It's just you probably don't want to root for that. And if you have to root for that, y'all better be 55 and 22 or whatever, 23 or 27, whatever, right? You better be 55 and 27. At least beat the Thunder and the Cavs and the Celtics once. Y'all have to meet the level of belief with the level of talent that you have. Meet or exceed that, right? And you do that with your actions. And I do think that we as a fan base are longing for a team that will show as much heart and passion as we do at home watching this team. We want them to be an accurate representation of the city, especially if you're from New York, and of the team and of the name that they wear on their chest. And I don't think that their current mentality takes away from that. I think if they've accepted what they are, the fans, you're going to have to accept what they are. You're going to have to accept what their mentality is, what their identity is. If you want to really enjoy this run, if you want to be on the run to complain, if you want to be on the run to nitpick and find every single fault or long for a team from last year, you're in another relationship now, dog. Look forward. Look forward. Deal with the problems that you have now, but look forward. Because if you keep looking back, you're going to trip and fall.
You know, you said something earlier. The comparison you gave to like someone who starts from the trenches and gets promoted and becomes a manager, and you know now they have to manage people and they have to do things differently. Like, you know, most people who work in 9 to 5s in offices, whatever, especially if you're like tech or sales or whatever, right? You realize that you have to pick your spots, and I think this team picks its spots. But the irony is, you know, we bang on this team when it seems like they're not serious and they're not trying and they're picking their spots, whatever. But the funny thing is, most of the league, that's how most of the league approaches the schedule. But this team in this administration and under this head coach don't do that. So, and I said to say, for those people who bang the table for Tibbs to get fired, but then you're mad because they let the Wizards cut a third 3-point lead to 4. It's like, well, you're mad at the mentality that the coach that you think is terrible has instilled, right? So I want to say that they picked it. Like I said, I didn't want to use the word entitled, but they picked their spots, and there's a big difference.
Right. So because entitled makes it seem like they feel like they are privileged like that. It's almost where I was saying early on in the season, y'all don't got it like that to just roll up out of bed and play. Y'all got to play for real. Like you're acting like y'all won a title already the way that you're approaching some of these games. When the reality is, I could like it, I could dislike it, but I better learn to love it, because the truth is they can walk out and whether it's by 1 or by 100, they can roll out of bed and beat half this league if they just show up and we are the New York Knicks. I don't like it because that's not what I grew up on, and I feel like it promotes the development of bad habits that could rear its ugly head in the playoffs. I'm definitely a practice the way you play kind of person, because I've seen it. I've seen it anecdotally that you can fumble when it matters most if you're not building on the blocks of these day-by-day, game-by-game experiences. But sometimes you got those people, if you've been on a team of any kind, that just have enough talent to fart around and be excellent. And it's annoying. I'm talking about burn your soul type annoying, but it is what it is. But then you imagine, well, what if they went as hard as somebody who has to scrap and claw for everything they got? That's why there's only a few all-time greats. You know what I'm saying? But that's another thing, Shawn, where I'm like, we were talking about it on the side, and I wanted to bring it in, as we get down to the final moments, about how this team is watched. Well, even before that, I think it's safe to say that this team is more of a glamour team that presses the hard work button when they need to. They're not hard work first. They have the principles, but they are a skilled team. They're not a scrappy team. They're a skilled team. And I think that's something that, if that's who they are, they need to lean into it. They need to be able to execute the offensive schemes and the defensive schemes that can mesh well with that identity. Because I think if they don't over-index on the things and the strategies and the players who can maximize themselves in certain roles, then this is all for naught. Then the annoyance is justified. Because once again, you sold the franchise, you sold the audience and the fans on what this team could be. But it seems like at times they aren't reaching that potential because of a variety of reasons, which brings us back to what we were talking about how you put it. I think you put it aptly, Shawn, with the Q rating. Basically, there are players and there's staff and there's coaches on this team who get more leeway for error. They get more of the benefit of the doubt than others. And I just think it shows. You can get into it. I do think that it's fascinating how that has developed over the course of this season.
Listen, it's been over the course of the Leon Rose administration. I mean, so I'll give an example. During playback, we did playback, myself, John, and Andrew, for the Cavs game, and we had noticed that in that third quarter, Mikal Bridges was not assertive enough, and we kind of called it out. And our friend Busy, shout out Busy, who is, I don't know, a bigger Mikal Bridges supporter that is not his family, started pointing out, they are, there's two non-shooters on the floor, and they're not doing this, they're not doing that. And I was like, that's not an excuse, dog. And what I said during the playback, I said was, listen, when Julius Randle didn't play well, and he had the worst spacing, he had some of the worst lineups. He played a bunch when Julius Randle didn't do well playing next to Nerlens Noel and Reggie Bullock and Alfred Payton, no one shot him any bail about, he's playing with two non-shooters. So it got me to thinking, it's interesting the players that we as a fan base, individually as a collective, decide to have a higher Q rating for, right? I wrote down I wrote down who has the highest Q rating on the team and who has the lowest Q rating on the team. And I actually wrote down 3 names for the high Q rating, and I wrote down 2 names for the low Q rating, and then there are 2 names I put in the middle because I didn't really know where to put them. So for me, obviously a high Q rating, Brunson is number 1.
Agreed.
Easily,
agreed.
Right?
Undisputed number 1 on the Q rating.
Yes, save for some a-holes on Twitter that will say things like,
ball hog. Not a playmaker, not a creator.
Doesn't defend enough, whatever.
Doesn't defend, yeah.
Whatever. Right. I would say number 2 is OG because
yep.
OG does OG does things. OG just does things that like you said, he comes with a new move. There are dunks that he's pulling off, and I'm just like, the guy that used to play his position could never pull that off. It's not a knock on him, but it's and even listen, Mensa's the first one that pointed out. Mensa rooted for the guy that played small forward for the New York Knicks before OG as much as anyone. Curious so we have the top 2. I'm curious to hear who your third guy is. Because let's see if we have the same one.
I think it's Josh Hart. I think it's Josh Hart.
So
He was he your middle? Was he your middle guy?
he's a middle guy.
He's a middle guy. I think it's Josh Hart, and he's in the third slot because the things that people complain about Josh Hart are consistent. Are like we already know that he's going to do it, but it's accepted because we know when the money's on the line, he comes through. But getting there during the regular season, fans are going to complain. But we know in the playoffs, he's going to show up. We just hoped that he could eliminate the silly stuff and like clean that up. Like even to the point where when he got on social and said, yo, guys, you know I do one stupid pass every game. Give me that one. And I said, okay, my compromise for you is do it in the first half. If you do it in the first half, I got nothing to say. Just at least not in the fourth quarter. Don't do anything crazy. So I can be persuaded off of that, but just thinking off the top of my head, I think if your top three means their praise and the grace outweighs the complaints, then I think it's Deuce McBride.
That's the third guy I had.
That's the third guy. Yeah, if that's where you're defining it by, like the praise outweighs any complaints that you have. Like if they mess up in a game, you don't hear about it as much as other people, then yeah, it's got to be Deuce.
Yeah, that's who I had. That's my third guy. In terms of Hart, I would have agreed with you up until about 2-3 weeks ago. It was actually during the Warrior game, which I watched at T-Squared Social. By the way, if you're not coming to T-Squared Social to watch the Knicks with us, you are hustling backwards. And Josh had a horrible game, and I'm just so used to people just loving Josh Hart, and because he's funny, he's on a roommate show, he tweets about parlays, and he says "F you" to Donovan Mitchell, and he knows how to play all the hits. And I was like, I remember talking to, I think Chris was there, Kevin Danishevsky was there. I was like, you know what, like he was the worst player today, but most people are gonna say that he's not. And I actually put a poll out like, who was the worst player today? And Kevin, to his credit, was like, no, I think people disagree. And Josh Hart was a leader with 65%. And I was like, it should be 90 because he was clearly terrible. But like Precious was bad, but you didn't see Precious in the second half. And then during a town hall, and again, if you want to join a town hall, you should become a Knicks Film School patron. I mentioned that to John, and John was like, nah, he pushed back on that. He said, I think that like you will see now more and more people are advocating for Josh Hart to get put on the bench. Which then you would have 2 months ago, which I agree with. So I think why I do think that more people are being more critical of Josh, but I think that the pushback is as strong, which is why I have him in the middle, because I think it's a perfect balance. Low Q ratings. Would you like to share who you think like the top 2 low Q ratings are?
Okay, so the first question is are we just talking players? Are we just talking players?
Anyone in the New York Knicks organization is eligible, and that includes my ticket rep.
So, first of all, I got to say, if you asked this question 10 years ago, 20 years ago, there probably would be a consensus number 1 overall. And the hot take, mild take, whatever take you want to call it, I don't think that consensus has been a consensus in this decade.
I don't have that guy on the list.
At all.
At all.
At all. And I think that's how he wants it.
Yes.
I think that's how he wants it. So mission accomplished. You know what? I think Mikal is the bottom.
That's who I have at the bottom. And
I think Bridges is at the bottom, especially after how Minutes Gate played out that whole day. I think if you had any argument one way or another, the Minutes Gate saga had to have quieted it for you. Was that who you had lowest?
That's who I have the lowest.
Who's
And
the second lowest?
the second lowest is, so funny thing is when you ask about does it have to be a player, I didn't think you were talking about the chairman of the Madison Square Garden sports company. I thought you were talking about the head coach.
No, I was, but that's what I was saying.
Oh,
like,
okay, yeah.
I was saying, yo, you know what's funny? You asked this question years ago,
Yes.
and it's not even a debate for a lot of folks, but now it's like there's only two people I think who have that. Low key three, but
No, I had them 1 and 2. And now for Mikal, it's not really his fault.
no, that's the worst part.
But it's because the biggest reason why he's number one. Actually, I'm lying. There are 5 reasons why he's number one. Unprotected pick in 2025, 2027, 2029, 2031, and an unprotected swap in 2028. And listen, we say it all the time. Mikal Bridges did not trade those picks for himself. He didn't ask to be traded for that. But when that happens, there is going to be the light is going to be shine on you, and you're going to become the GOAT. You're going to be, and not in a good way. You're going to become the scapegoat, I should say. But I just think as if there's a lot, like, listen, I think Mikal can be better in certain areas, but I think sometimes now it's just like it's like he has very little political capital. And listen, the head coach, we don't have to go why people are down on the head coach. I've always said that, like, I think there are things that he does well. I think there are things that he does poorly. And I think that people who over-index on one side or the other are missing the forest from the trees. We'll wrap up with this one because I got to run.
Yeah.
There's one guy I had in the middle. Who's the other guy? 2 guys I had in the middle. One was Josh Hart. Who's the other?
Mitch?
No. Mitch might be above Deuce, so now I think about it. Like, in a good Q rating. Because, like, I'll put Mitch below Deuce because of his injury issues, but Mitch is definitely, like,
if there was no injury issues, then he would low-key compete for the second spot.
Yes, he would. Yeah. Absolutely.
Who would be the other one if it's not Tyler Kolek?
No. Oh, Tyler, man. Listen.
Oh, I know who it is.
Yeah, shout out to Tommy Beer, man. Find someone who loves you as much as Tommy loves Tyler Kolek.
Boy, Tommy Beer is the Matt Murdock to Tyler Kolek's White Tiger, boy. Let me tell you. Campaign.
I think he's on the high side.
Who's the other person?
Karl Anthony Towns.
Oh shit, Cat. I forgot about that.
And I think he's polarizing because, like, he does things very, very well. And he does some things very, very, very poorly.
Right.
So I have them in the middle. But listen, I say out to say, listen, try to evaluate these players, these coaches, these front offices with an open mind. Don't begin experiments with the end in mind. Try to we all have our biases. You may not be able to remove your biases when evaluating these players, but just if you're aware that you have them, it can help you articulate your arguments better, because that will help you get to the playoffs faster. Because, again, as I started at the beginning of the show, this team is vibeless for a multitude of reasons, and April 19th cannot get here fast enough.
For sure. And I think Cat is in the middle because I think as a fan base, we made the sacrifice. Like, we made the rooting sacrifice to say we know what Cat brings, we know what he doesn't bring. Do what came here to do, and do that well, and got no beef. You know what I'm saying? So I know you got to run. I'll take this Andrew super chat, and
yeah, I got like 2 minutes.
All right, cool.
Super chat.
Friday vibes. NBA question for both of you. Who do you have for awards? MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, Coach, MIP, etc. Any strong takes there?
MVP, I would just give it a Joker. I'm not going to cry if SJ wins. DPOY, Draymond Green, get the fuck out of here. It's probably Evan. Like, you don't get to scratch your ass for 2 months and then start campaigning for a lifetime achievement award. I'll give it to Evan Mobley. Although honestly, Dyson Daniels, I heard a stat today. Shout out to Chris Burnett from Hoop Spaces that like the team that has the Utah Jazz have they had the least amount of steals in the NBA. Dyson Daniels has like 217 steals. Like, if you took all of Dyson Daniels' steals away from the Hawks, they'd have less steals than the Jazz. Not that steals is a barometer of defense, but whatever.
Yeah.
Coach of the year, it is
Dagnall?
No. We just played this team. Why am I blanking on Cleveland's head coach?
Kenny Atkinson.
Kenny Atkinson, and it's not because I have a bet on him at 18-1 to win. Most improved player, I forgot who I have for most improved player. I'll say this. Rookie of the year should be the dude we're going to see on Saturday night, Zachary Risacher. Get the Stephon Castle shit out of here. It should be Zachary Risacher. He's been consistently, like, I think it should be him. Most improved. So I'll say this. On a month ago, I made a bet, a 2-leg parlay of Jalen Brunson, clutch player of the year, and Cade Cunningham, most improved. I hate whoever started this trend of giving most improved to players drafted top 3 who suddenly take a leap, and it's like, I hate it. But for my wallet and my pocketbook, I would like Cade Cunningham to win most improved player, and Jalen Brunson to hit 65 games so he could be eligible for clutch player so I can cash my bet. All right, I got to head out of here.
My man, I'll talk to you soon, bro.
Yes, sir.
All right, and as for me, I'll say my MVP, I'm giving it to Shea. I'm a roll to Shea. Like, once again, I won't cry if Jokic wins. I'll say that. I won't cry if Jokic wins, but I'm going to give it to Shea because I do come from the school of tie goes to the record. And I think Shea is having an incredible season. What Jokic is doing is also incredible. So I know it's going to be a tough bet, but he's also doing it with a team that's hovering around 3rd or 4th place. They've been kind of the bottom of the dumps, and they've needed him to be extraordinary, right? And for him to be, for them to even have a shot. But what the Thunder are doing right now, you take Shea off that team, yeah, they're middle of the road. I think when you look at his stats and you look at what he's accomplishing as a player, I don't think there's a bad choice between the two. And quietly, if the Bucks had a better record, Giannis is having an incredible season too. I want to mention that, but I do think that Shea is my MVP. Defensive player of the year, I lean more towards Dyson Daniels because I've seen him in multiple times, and that dude cuts off everybody's water. Like, if you have a good game against him, you gotta celebrate. Like, that dude is very different. And it was Wemby before he got hurt, of course. Coach, I'd give it to Dagnall. I could see Atkinson winning it just because of the leap the Cavs made, but usually best record goes to the coach. I can't remember whether or not he had if he already won Coach of the Year, but if not, then I could see Atkinson winning it. MIP, yeah, I'm with Shawn. I hate the whole you were a top 3 pick and now you made a leap to All-Star. I thought it might be J-Dub because I felt like with J-Dub, when he makes an All-Star team, that's going to be an MIP year for him. But I do think that Cade and being a key catalyst of the Pistons making their resurgence back to the playoffs after the years that they've had, I think narrative-wise, he got it. Brunson hits the 65. He's the clutch player of the year. And yeah, I think that's it. 6th man of the year is probably going to go to Peyton Pritchard for sure. No real strong takes there. I think my ballot is pretty measured. But yeah, that's what it is, man. And that is it for Casual Fridays. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to chat. Y'all were live. Y'all were beautiful today. Let me check some questions before. Ben Kingervy, I know you asked something about theories on why Mikal's 3-point attempts have fallen off a cliff in the past couple of months. One thing I will say is that he is super comfortable shooting in the mid-range. Super comfortable. Super efficient and highly comfortable shooting that mid-range. I think he has to be encouraged to shoot more. He's more apt to shoot 3-pointers on fast breaks. When they're on the break, he's pulling up from 3. Getting it within the flow of the offense is a little bit more difficult. I think if they set up for him to be a corner boy and hit those corner threes, and to get him out in transition shooting those threes, you can up the field goal attempts. I do think he's going to need to over-index it, especially on teams that play drop coverage and are forcing and taking away the mid-range, forcing him to shoot from three. You got to make him pay somehow. And also taking over with second units. I think those are the two places where you see the most opportunity for him to increase his three-point range. Thank you so much, Ben Kilgurvey. Appreciate you. And appreciate everybody who tuned in for Casual Fridays on the Knicks Film School YouTube channel. Definitely share this. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Join the Knicks Film School community and the Knicks Film School Patreon. There's tons of content surrounding the Knicks, whether you like film session breakdowns, you like shows like Casual Friday, town halls where you can talk to the rest of the KFS faculty as we talk about all things related to the Knicks. Whole lot of content. Shout out to Jonathan Macri. Get on his newsletter as well, where you get his unique perspective 5 days a week if you are a subscriber. You are a voracious consumer of Knicks content and NBA content as a whole. I can tell you this is a great place to be. So for Shawn, for me, you're awesome. Thank you for locking in with us on Casual Friday. Knicks got the Hawks on Saturday, Suns on Sunday. Jalen Brunson is poised to make his return this weekend at some point. If I had to guess, I'd probably say Phoenix. Give it one more day, especially since it's the second game of a back-to-back. Yeah, of course, they stacked the back-to-back games at the end of the season, but whatever. I think it's going to be Sunday against the Suns. I'd be shocked if it was Saturday, depending on how they said he looked good in practice today. We'll see. I don't see him playing any back-to-back. So play on Sunday, finish out the rest of the string, get to 65, hit your requirements, and more importantly, get back into the flow of the game so that he can be prepared for the playoff run. So shout out to him. It's going to be good to see Jalen Brunson back in uniform for this team. And yeah, that does it for Knicks Film School's Casual Friday, man. Thank you once again for locking in with me. I'm Jeff Johnson. We'll talk to you soon.